So last week was E3, and I have to say that overall, I was pretty impressed by the number of games that were being released. Granted, most people would say that this year's E3 was a bit of a disappointment, but I have to actually disagree. Especially when it comes to anything that was shown during the Microsoft part of the event. I mean, it's like I said, there were some games that were shown that were just absolutely phenomenal and fun to play, and then there were some things that were just Dude, mobile games are just as bad as live action remakes. And yeah, I said that. But believe it or not, there are actually some games at E3 that I would really like to get my hands on. But I'm actually not talking about the huge AAA title games. To be honest, I'm very disappointed in not seeing any gameplay of Halo Infinite or Gears 5. But for that reason, I'm left to only wonder what would happen if I actually enjoyed some of these smaller games. And to be honest, I think I might. And if you want me to prove it, here's a list of games from Microsoft that happened at the E3 Expo that probably will suck, but then again, probably won't suck. So to start this list off, I'm going to talk about Starvana Gauge, which is an indie strategy game developed by Massive Damage Incorporated. Now I can bet that you're probably thinking that this game came out during the early days of the Sega Saturn and it's finally getting an HD remake, but the truth is that it's actually not. To be honest, the reason why I like this game is because of the pixel-based graphics and the fact that it's a turn-based RPG. Which for me is a nostalgic throwback to the early days of playing Final Fantasy and trying to desperately keep my party members alive. Now, I'm not able to tell you too much about the game's story because there's not much to go off of, but I can tell you that it's based on you leading a group of rebels through an interplanetary war against an evil empire. But what's truly sick about this game is that it allows you to do more than the basic attack and defend command system for each of your characters. But instead, you can actually interrupt and counterattack your enemies throughout the battles that you encounter. You also get the ability to unlock new crew members as well as upgrade them, which is very well needed considering that the enemies and the bosses that you face during the game will also be able to adapt and evolve to higher levels. The only true and saddening part about this game is that it's not going to come out soon enough. In fact, it's going to come out next year in 2020. But hopefully until then I'll be able to have certain number of games that can keep me entertained throughout the rest of this year. Speaking of which, there is actually a game that's going to be coming out this summer. Creature in the Well is a game developed by Flight School Studios, and I have to honestly say, this game does look pretty insane. So this game has a lot of fast-paced movement, but to put it in short and give you a quick rundown, it's a hack and slash dungeon crawler style game, but it has a mix of pinball, as well as a little bit of some comic book style shaded graphics. In this game, you play as a robot known as Bot C. And as you would probably guess, you're actually the last remaining robot that's active, and your main objective is to restore power to an ancient facility that's being haunted by an unknown creature. Your reason for doing this, however, is because you're trying to save the city of Mirage from a deadly sandstorm that's about to hit. In order to do this, you have to use your sword, which is an actual pinball flipper itself. You then combine that with your ability to make orbs of energy. You then use that orb of energy as a pinball and you hit it up against other pieces of machinery that are trying to stop you from progressing. The game allows you to upgrade and customize your character, and though it's not very specific as to how that affects the gameplay, it is stated that different weapons and clothing will actually allow you to play in your own kind of way in terms of how you approach each level. But like I said before, this game's going to be coming out this summer and it's actually going to be available for the Nintendo Switch as well as on Steam. But it is shown on the official website itself that it's actually going to be available for the Xbox One. So that's pretty good for a lot of you console players out there. Speaking of which, I should probably blow the dust off of mine. It's been a while. Alright, so moving on past that, we have Grand Theft Cthulhu. And no, I'm not joking about that. The developer clearly stated that he wanted this game to be referred to as Grand Theft Cthulhu. Now, the reason why he's calling this game Grand Theft Cthulhu is because this is actually a horror-based driving survival game developed by a small group known as the Kurt Russell Fan Club. Actually, if you want right now, you can go to the official Twitter page in order to get more of an in-depth kind of look at how the game's being developed. Now, to be completely fair about this, the game itself is actually called Dead Static Drive if you were actually trying to Google this. And it was actually shown off at PAX Australia last year, and it had a few playable demos. So, in this game, you travel through a deserted, apocalyptic American wasteland that's filled and populated by various monsters. Though there isn't too much detail right now on what these monsters might be, it is also shown that you have a chance of encountering humans who have also been infected with something that's known as the crow virus, which then turns them into crow people. But instead of this game being extremely easy and just letting you drive a car while you run over a bunch of monsters and half humans, you actually get the ability to get out of your car and do some physical combat instead. Not only that, but some missions actually require you to walk into certain locations in order to scavenge and hunt for items. It's a really good idea, and it's actually satisfying to look at visually. The design choice itself kinda looks like the same lust that you would get from playing Breath of the Wild, only a little bit smaller, and it has a bird's eye view. And if you're sitting here wondering to yourself, when can I play this awesome game? You're gonna have to wait next year in 2020. Yeah, I know. Feels bad, man. Next up, we have a Contra-themed shooter developed by Joy Masher, which is called Blazing Chrome. No, this game is not an HD remake of an old title, but if you're starting to notice a little bit of the trends in the games that I'm putting here, yes, I really do like the classic 2D side-scrolling games that have pixel-based graphics. I mean, seriously look at this game and tell me that it is not straight out of a Super Nintendo. So this game is a run-and-gun style shooter, and if I had to guess, if they're basing it on the playstyle of Contra, then maybe they're also basing the difficulty in terms of Contra as well. But the story, from what I understand, is actually a little bit different compared to Contra. In this game, you play as two characters who are the last out of a group of rebels who are trying to desperately save humanity that's been enslaved several years from an AI-controlled group, Robot Armageddon. Yeah, it's Skynet, I know. So, these two main characters are called Mavra and Doyle, but more than likely you'll just refer to them as Player 1 and Player 2 when the action goes down. And of course, just like Contra, you're allowed to actually play with yourself as well as another friend. This game allows you to have local multiplayer as well as shared split-screen co-op. But this game isn't like the old Ninja Gaiden games where you go through various levels trying to swing a sword. In this game, you have hover bikes, guns, even bigger guns, laser guns, armored suits with guns, while all at the same time getting shot at by mechanical robots that have, yep, you guessed it, more guns. Now, there are 5 different apocalyptic environments that you'll be able to go through along the game, and there's also a ton of different mechanical enemies that are trying to shoot and kill you. And if you're wondering whether or not your machine can handle so much pixel-based action, the minimum specs required for this is at least an Intel Core Duo and a GeForce 9600 GT. Or you can get a Radeon HD 3870, but if you're not into all that technical jargon, it's also going to be available on the PlayStation 4 and the Nintendo Switch sometime later this year. Alright, these next few games are not going to be old school themed games, but instead I'm going to switch it up a bit. This next game is Ori, and if you don't know about Ori, it is the more beautiful games out of all the ones that I've even listed so far. Ori and the Will of the Wisp is a sequel to the first game, Ori and the Blind Forest, and it's developed by Moon Studios. So if you haven't played this game, then I would say you absolutely need to, because there's a reason why this game is a multi-award winning platform. It takes a little bit of some inspiration from Rayman as well as Metroid Prime. So if you don't know the true backstory of this game, you play as a white guardian spirit named Ori, and you basically go through solving puzzles in what only I can describe in a very beautiful fashion. Your purpose in this one, however, is to travel past the forest of Nibel. I hope I said that. Nibel? I hope I said that right. As you try to uncover the truth of Ori's destiny, while at the same time battling against giant spiders, tentacled beasts, and a lot of various other monsters. Although there isn't a lot of information about how long this game is expected to be or any of the new features involved, it has been said, however, that there are a few new different upgrades to the game compared to the previous title that are actually kind of difficult for me to explain unless you actually played the first one. But for the most part, all you do need to know is that you can expect it to drop February 11th, 2020 of next year. And of course, it will be on Xbox and PC. And finally, this is actually a game that I've been waiting a very long time to talk about, which again, like I said, has no pixel-based graphics. But it does have a very strong similarity to a few other games that you may have played or seen before. So, Bleeding Edge is an upcoming team-based multiplayer game developed by Ninja Theory, and from what I've heard, this game has been in development for quite some time now, which actually does make sense in a way, to me at least, for why this game probably wouldn't have been released a few years ago. If you consider that based off the way it looks, you might confuse it with other games that focus on playing as heroes with unique special abilities. So yeah, games like Overwatch, Paladin, and Smite, as well as Battleborn, they all focus on team-based mechanics requiring players to sometimes have to choose a character that's more suited for the in-game situation in order to have a proper synergy with their teammates. Bleeding Edge is indeed a similar concept to that game, but the main difference in this game is more of the center focus around melee combat. And also, every character isn't restricted to doing only certain movements. So, for example, every character is not only able to get a hoverboard, but is also able to do a ground and pound ability, which seems like something that only a tank-based class would be able to do. Which, speaking of classes, each character is able to assign themselves to a class out of a total of 3. So you've got Assassin, Support, or Tank, which probably doesn't need too much of an explanation as to what each one does, but every character also has 3 abilities with their own cooldowns. You'll also have an ultimate ability that each character can do, but each character also has a choice of 2 ultimates, which is very different from just having the one expectation from every character that you see on the map. By the way, these guys are the same developers of the infamous Devil May Cry series, so the third person view and the hack and slash melee system might have a little bit of a similar feel to it, but more than likely if you try to go in solo and just try to hack and slash your way into battle without a team, you'll just about get annihilated. Bleeding Edge is going to be coming to the Xbox Game Pass, but if you want, and actually you should probably do right now, there's actually going to be an alpha beta that's going to be launching June 27th on Xbox. Now, this game might suck if it doesn't properly distinguish itself from its predecessors that have tried so hard to do what Overwatch has done. But then again, who knows? All of the games on this list might entirely suck if they don't separate themselves from the rest of the games on the market. But the only way to find out for ourselves if these games are actually worth it would be to let time run its course and see what happens over the next few months. I mean, come on, you're not going to judge a game simply off its first playthrough, are you? So hey, if you think that these games might suck, you can go ahead and tell me in the comments section below. Or even better, you can tell me what games you know will suck for sure this year. Because there are a lot of games that came out of E3 this year. And to be honest, I only chose to focus on the Microsoft portion of this entire thing because let's face it, that is a video not worth the length of me making.